South Asia or Hindu Kush or something like that, that's a really late seasonal signal.
Yeah.
Same thing with like a Durban or something like that. Anything like that really, let's say had more or less periods of light, we're forcing it to fit in this box that we've kind of created. So will it flower? Yes. Are we optimizing the conditions that plant really would do best under? Probably not.
No, and we have that comparison actually coming up a little bit, which I found was very interesting.
We're Jug Dealers, we're the podcast you need in your feed, teaching the game like you never seen. Jerin, Gabe, GRAMBO, true OGs, masters of the globe, set your mind free. From Denver, Colorado, where the data's green, we set the data points for the SOPs. Jug Dealers Podcast, yes indeed.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jug Dealers Podcast, where we discuss all things cannabis and lifestyle related. Brought to you by the good people at 5-8, and as always available at jugdealers.net.
And we do want to mention too, you can always get samples through jugdealers.net as well. You can click on that samples up top, fill out the growers form, and then it will be a one-time fee. You'll actually have to put in sample as a discount, and you'll get it for $95 shipping and handling one time, and that is a $400+ value.
It's a good deal.
It's a very good deal.
The whole line.
It's a good deal.
The winter, the ruby, the bases, everything you need.
All that good stuff.
I just set up one of the guys I work with, and his flower got better.
Look, we believe seeing is believing, and that's why we've made that available. And it is, rather than going and pitching and choosing. And of course, at times we do make different things, available. And we do actually have a very interesting deal that we're going to be putting out on the VIP growers list and pushing the bases out a little bit more. I don't know if that's actually going to be live or when it is, Josh, but I know we've been doing some stuff on the bases, like, for example, buy an Equinox and get a season free.
Well, that would have been last month at this point, but we got a new one this month. So make sure you're signed up. Check your email.
Yes, always check your email. Again, that's why the Launchpad is nice, because you can kind of get all our stuff. Bookings wise too, come see us in Germany. This guy and I right here are going to be at Mary Jane Berlin. We're going to have a booth, and we're going to have a very exclusive drop on some things that the continent of Europe has never seen, and it's only a few days away. Really, it's only a couple months away. It's pretty crazy how close it's getting. You can click on that and sign up to be on the list. It is very exclusive. It's a very small drop, so you're going to want to make sure and reach out to us so I can get you on the list. I'll give you all the information. I'll tell you what booth number it is, give you our hours and all that kind of good stuff. We are super looking forward to that. So Germany and Europe in general, here we come. So with all that being done, we got all our shout outs. We got all our announcements.
It's actually kind of funny because this is a little bit of a segue, because you always question whether diesel maybe needed its own
its own light recipe, and and a lot of different things. And that's what really we're going to talk about today is light recipes. We're not talking specifically just light schedules. And what I mean by that is we're talking about day periods and night periods more specifically, as opposed to looking at spectral things. We will have a nod to kind of that spectral control, but that's not really what we're wanting to talk about today. We do feel like the spectral things
we've been locked in on, for so much time, we've been locked in on all these principles, 12-12 and plant numbers and veg times and all the rest of these things. Whereas now that we've been in it on a commercial scale for a long time, we're starting to adopt some of the principles. Well, and what we're looking at it as a light recipe, right? And that's what we're calling a light recipe, not just a light schedule. It is going to be specific to, again, like I said, the light and dark periods, but we're going to look at some different peer-reviewed science. Maybe, just maybe, 12 and 12 is, as we've talked about, could be just an arbitrary number, and maybe things like 1310, even up to 1410, where is that kind of point of no return or point of lack of ROI. And there's interesting because people have been actually looking into this. We are going to be bringing up some specific peer-reviewed stuff as well, some studies. So we are going to break it into 3 segments. We're going to look at the plant science, so specifically how cannabis detects in response to light and dark and the hormones that are involved with that, et cetera. What the new research says specifically about 12 and 12 versus 13-11 versus 14-10, and what the data actually shows, which I think is really important, because we are trying to bring in, not only some anecdotal experience, but also semantic data, and then also the genetics question, and really specifically, why isn't there a universal light recipe, and talk a little bit about dialing in specific cultivars if that's what you want to do. A little bit of a sneak peek, go figure. There is a genetic element to it, as always. There is a strain specificity element to it, as always. And when if you've anybody who's grown stuff outside, you know that some stuff likes to flower at the end of July, and some stuff likes to flower a week or two into August. And that right there,
that's where I personally saw
pushes that discussion.
And that's where I personally saw those, when I put, 8, 10, 12 different strains out for over a couple of summers. That's where I really looked at it and went,
you're like, they're all doing different things.
And I even had it happen by putting it out too early in the season, right? So it'd start re-vegging because the high period was too
Or you'd
too
have
early,
it, or same thing.
Or same thing in late,
You'd have people put them out in like May, and then they start auto flowering.
Yeah. And that's what I've had happen, but only very sensitive ones, right?
Yep.
So anyway, let's look specifically into the plant science. I've been stumbling over my words a little bit tonight. The plant science and how cannabis actually detects light. GRAMBO, can you please move that up just a little bit? So before we talk about 1212 versus anything else, we have to understand what the plant is actually doing. I have talked about phytochrome red and phytochrome red on here before, but let's really just kind of break it all down like we like to, and
this is where we go into this is why photos are different than autos.
Yes, and again, remember, even though we call it
photoperiodic plant,
well, definitely photoperiodic plant, but also day length specific, but it's really they call them short day and long day, but it's really about the night specific.
Night is what makes them flower.
So the plant's not counting hours of light, rather it's actually measuring hours of uninterrupted darkness, and I do like to specifically say that uninterrupted darkness. Darkness. I have literally been stumbling all over the place. Anyway, uninterrupted darkness. So cannabis is a short day plant, specifically meaning it flowers when nights get long enough, right? So is it just 12 hours of darkness, or could it be less maybe actually, right? Yep. Could it be more? Is there some fluctuation there? Those are the things we're going to be talking about.
Darkness.
And the distinction does matter because the plant's biological clock is measuring that dark period. Again, not the light period. That is why even just something as little as a 10-minute interruption, which by the way, it does take like a 10 to 15 minute interruption.
Yeah, it's not.
These people, when they go in and they turn on the phone and show you something quick in the room, even turn on the lights for a few minutes, it's actually not quite enough.
I don't recommend
I'm not saying I would do it.
Yes.
I still am not saying I would do it. But again, that's also why, in theory, you could, even during the day, have these uninterrupted and go bing, 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 and it depends. But also, honestly, it's very interesting how you can force flower and things like that. That's why even in Easter lilies or, poinsettias, and I've talked about this before, but that's how you get these to force flower. So they're already on specific dates, and sometimes it's literally just interrupting that, that flowering period, or giving them more or less light, but still getting the same response by interrupting that dark period, right? If it's a long day versus a short day plant. Specifically, the phytochrome system.
Yep. You talk about this quite a bit.
Yeah, and I mean, because I've always thought it was something.
You're talking to the light guys a lot.
Right. Well, right. And this is the plant's light sensor, right? And so, phytochrome red builds up during the day and then degrades back to as phytochrome far red during the night, back to phytochrome red. So it's kind of one of those things like I've always said, 12 hours and 12. So it goes up and comes back to the same point. Obviously, it doesn't have to come all the way back to the same point. And I'm really simplifying this, of course, by doing this little swoop thing that I like to do for whatever reason.
And be clear, in this episode, we're really only talking about timing.
Yeah,
we don't even really get into fight as far as any of the colors and the reds, in which that's going to be a whole different frontier.
Yeah. And this is really, this particular hormone is, all about, really it's all about light and telling the plant specifically how long the night has been. In addition to
tell us about the Florigen, because this was the thing.
Well, this is a funny one, and even when we're putting this together, so this one I guess technically has been proven at this point, but for the longest time, Florigen was a theoretical hormone, and that was the flowering hormone, and it was named before it was identified. Actually, at this point, it does seem to actually been identified.
In plant stuff is that we don't know, but we know.
Well, right. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Isn't that funny though, too?
It's like the rise of sheath. Like we didn't know about that till a couple years ago.
Well, right.
They go hand in hand.
You're right. And it wasn't even coined, or even knowing that, something like, well, there's got to be a flowering hormone out there, but like, where is it? Or is it all just environmentally, initiated? You know what I mean? And does, temperature and different things like that, what all has a play into it? Or is it even one single thing? Or is it really more likely it's an interaction of a bunch of different things? And that's really what you see in plants typically. So anyway, with the flowering hormone, with Florigen, once the dark period is long enough, and basically the PFR, like we said, the phytochrome red to the phytochrome far red conversion crosses a threshold. The plant produces a mobile signal called Florigen, which has now been basically coded. It's a protein, right? Yeah, that they've been coded by, by the flowering locust T gene. So they have very specifically, and they call it.
And these
FT.
proteins, they're sending signnwhich they're just like, hey, do this.
Exactly, because really a plant's, that's what, in a nutshell, I mean, we talked about a plant just being a sugar factory, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I found very interesting. And I loved that simplification of it because I thought it was so, straightforward. But you can also look at them as a protein factory, because really that's what you're doing. You've got all these different building blocks and amino acids, and then you've got all these different codes to tell you what different proteins, and it's the proteins that are actually, going out and doing the work and make it happen. So it's very interesting in that regard, right? So anyways, Florigen travels from the leaves through the phloem to the shoot apex and triggers the transition from vegetative to reproductive growth. This is a molecular trigger for flowering. So if you don't have a long enough dark period, you're not going to get a Florigen signal, and therefore you're not going to get any flower.
Yep.
Pretty linear relationship. I do think, and I've always felt like, that's funny. I do think that, it always helps when you kind of try and do these multiple signals too. And we'll talk a little bit too about this aggressive nature of even going, whether it's 18 to 12 or it's 18 to 13 or 14, no matter what, it's a pretty aggressive change.
Let's talk about what 12 hours of darkness actually represents, because, in the Northern Hemisphere, which is where
we live, and most of our listeners do, shout out to Australia though. We got some Southern Hemisphere. Yeah.
12 hours of and South Africa.
That's right too. Yeah.
You have a lot of friends down there.
That is true.
That corresponds to late September, that autumn equinox, and for a plant that evolved in, let's say, in South Asia or Hindu Kush or something like that, that's a really late seasonal signal.
Yeah.
Same thing with like a Durban or something like that. Anything like that really, let's say had more or less periods of light, we're forcing it to fit in this box that we've kind of created. So will it flower? Yes. Are we optimizing the conditions that plant really would do best under? Probably not.
No, and we have that comparison actually coming up a little bit, which I thought was very interesting. Again, what is 12? And we're going to kind of see it's right down the middle for the most part. You're going to see as little 11, you're going to see as much up to 14. Yep. And different plants that, again, and we have talked about, and just a little bit of foreboding here, but a little bit about, country of origin. When it's, if we're talking about potatoes, we go back and we go to Peru, right? If we're talking about apples, we go back to Kazakhstan. You're wanting to go back to the place of origin to maximize the genetic pool that you can go back to, right? If you're having problems, or even if it's not having problems. And in this case, it's about understanding the plant that you're working with. Now, granted, we know we're dealing with a lot of hybrids, polyhybrids, whatever. So this is a little bit difficult to do, but what you can do if you want to play around, and a lot of you like to play around, you can. This is something, and we're gonna
F around and find out, son.
Which some of them you might, right? So, anyway,
our listeners love effing around.
They do.
They love finding out.
But just to wrap this back around, if you could move that back up just a little bit. Great. So, for a plant from equatorial regions that naturally flower under 11-hour dark periods, because you got to think right on the equator, it's basically 12 and 12 all the time. Sometimes 11 and a half. So even just 11, it's going to be pretty sensitive to where that's all it really takes. 12 hours of darkness is an even later signal that experiences in nature, right? So it doesn't even need that full 12.
Do you think a lot of the genetic pool that people are growing these days comes from like equatorial flower?
I think that a lot of them.
You know what I'm saying though?
I think a lot. Well, I think at least. Well, how do I say this? I think at least for how we've selected them indoors, I think a lot of those tendencies, being that they're very sensitive, even at less than 12 hours. Like they're really trying to flower. I don't know. That's interesting because.
Like I just think about it, and I can't say that what we select nowadays would be the equatorial stuff.
Right. Well, it isn't, but you think about the way it is in the genetics and how it seems to lend itself a little bit more to that. And you'll even see some are in that like 11.8 or 12 or 12.2, which are going to be right at that point, right? And are going to be some of these popular strains, but like, Did we get there by dumb luck, or more specifically, I'm sure we were picking it out because, again, just like we talk about LED or HPS, Gabe, being a selection pressure, picking some that tend to be better performing at 12-12. Like I'm just thinking about that, right? 100%. So they get into flower faster, they get that signal, whatever. So moving on just a bit here, right? So critical night length concept. Every cultivar has a critical night length, and it's not
it's not the same.
Shocker. It's not the same, and it's not just 12. The minimum hours of in or uninterrupted darkness requires to initiate flowering. So we're seeing that it can be as little as 10 hours of darkness, and it can be as much as up to like 14 hours darkness. It can be the flip flop. Those are both pretty extreme on both ends, but we're going to see. Some strain specificity to that.
Well, and the big thing is, who, especially you look at the building that I'm running and 200 lights, like who's running 200 lights a room. I mean,
right.
And like, who's running the same genetics you have to be running the same genetics and running these things through some trials to be able to start figuring these things out.
Right. And also be specific.
And that's why everybody uses 12, because they know it's safe.
Well, they know it's safe. And I know that, by the way, I've used this, on the other end. In reality, people aren't going with less light. It's always more, right? So what we're really looking at specifically, and what these studies are looking at, is how much lower can we go from 12 hours of darkness, right? Because if we go down to 10 and we can get 14 hours, you think about the percentage of extra light and micromoles and actually light that's coming in. And that's going to be part of the argument for doing it as well, is the additional biomass.
I mean, if you're running something at 14 hours of light a day over a 50-day cycle, you're going to get an extra 100 hours of light.
And if you can prove that ROI over the additional electricity used under a massive facility, and we're going to talk about that. So anyway, that's really what the critical night link concept is. And it is genetically determined by where, as we talked about, that plant's ancestors evolved. So the source of origin, right? So why don't we talk a little bit about stray light sensitivity? Gabe, I'll be honest, the number on this, I was kind of surprised.
So research has actually shown that cannabis flowering can be disrupted by stray light as low as 0.1 micromoles at leaf level.
Now it's going to have to be sustained, at leaf level, right?
But look, that's barely visible to the human eye. I always used to say to my guys, like, when you're testing a room, go in, shut the door, and lock yourself in there for, I was always told it was 18 minutes, but it takes 18 minutes.
Even 10 will get you pretty well.
But it's the type of thing where you'll notice that when you spend a decent amount of time in a room and you look up.
Hey everybody, I did not want to interrupt the show. However, we need you to help us by taking your grow to the next level. Go right on over to jugdealers.shop and pick up some Slicium. Don't let bugs or a failed AC or a broken pump take your grow down. Get Slicium at jugdealers.shop. It is readily water soluble and uptaken immediately to thicken cell walls and reduce any and all abiotic and biotic stresses. Keep in mind, this is how we support the show. We are never sponsored. We are funded by you taking your grow to the next level. So to support us and your grow, head on over to jugdealers.shop and get yourself something real nice. Now back to the show.
A decent amount of time in a room and you look up, all of a sudden you can see a lot more than you thought you could in these rooms. And I've had buildings where up at the ceiling, between there's another room next to it that's got the lights on and this room's off. You'd be surprised what you can see through some of those walls.
And I know, look, we can have the green light argument, right? Does the plant use green light? 100% it does, but it uses it in a little bit different way. So that's why you can kind of get away with that, right? But I always, even in my rooms, even if I had it in a tent, I would always still have a green light on. I would never just have all the lights on because there's so many little pinholes. And like you say, it's a heck of a lot more light than you think. And so to that 0.1, I think that's pretty crazy. But even a digital clock, light leaks, around a door, a phone screen in theory, and these need to be sustained, right? All of it do register. So
a lot of us have tablets in the room nowadays.
It's a really good point. About that.
Make sure that at night, that tablet's shutting off.
Well, and what I think you're seeing is you're seeing delayed or inconsistent flowering a lot of times when you're seeing these, especially in new rooms where it's a small enough light leak where maybe you haven't spent the time in there to really see it.
Dude, perfect example. Perfect example. The guys at Culta out in Maryland, they were doing a big outdoor. They were doing a big outdoor grow, and there was one part of the grow that it just wasn't flowering, and they had a street light, off in the distance. But it was enough. That it was disrupting the flower in there. Same thing. I mean, whenever I've grown flowers in my yard.
Right.
There's a street light across the street that, I'd love to just shoot that thing out.
Well, and I've always thought about it, but here's what's crazy too, right? I've always grown outdoor and been able to do it with the street light that's out there. And like, I don't know. It's like, is it because it's always from it? It's always adapted.
The moon.
Like,
the moon is so goddamn bright sometimes. It doesn't bother them.
I'll be honest with you. That's always kind of been my argument with people who are like, well, what about a street light or whatever? I'm like, have you seen the moon on a bright night?
It's got magical stuff happens outdoors. So that might be an episode we'll dig in.
So sometimes,
why is outdoors so magical? We'll dive in.
So I guess before we get out of section 1 and kind of the science, we would be remiss, Gabe, if we don't talk about auto-flowering plants.
Some of us would be remiss.
Well, I knew that's why I kind of said that, because I knew how you're. Anyway, shout out to Night Owl Seeds. I have seen better and better auto-flowering we see all the time, but what we want to talk about is that FT, the Florigen gene exception. So a 2024 study, and again, this Florigen stuff, pretty new stuff here, right? Identified auto-flowering cannabis carries a modified version of the flowering locus T, the FT gene, as we spoke about earlier, the same gene that we know controls Florigen production. In autos, this gene has been altered so the plant flowers on a limited internal time clock rather than a response to dark period length. This is why autoflowers that's why they flower regardless of photo period.
They just go.
But this is, in particular, these are Rooter House genetics that have been collected from northern extreme environments where the summer days are super long. They need to utilize all of that time and then flower over a short period of days, right? So they have to flower on a schedule, not on a signal. So obviously we'd have to mention those autoflowers. And you know what? I think eventually there's going to be more and more interesting work done there where you get a little more, the type of flower that we want with getting that utilization of those long days.
They just did the American Autoflower Cup. Our buddy Chubbs, he's won like 6 out of 10 of these things, and he's just killing it. And the bud's amazing. And I'm an autoflower supporter. If you know the right grower and the right genetics, dude, it's fire.
Well, here's the
bud's
thing.
Amazing, but it's not replicatable.
Well, that is But again, and
imagine you have a great run at the track and you can't ever take that car down the track ever again.
That'd be a bummer.
It blows up right at the end of the track.
That'd be a bummer. I know I know everybody thought I froze right there for a second, but that's because my mind was frozen for a second. That's the main bet. But that's why I also
mentioned one hot date.
That's why I also mentioned stability right off the bat. If you could get it down to and you know what, maybe it's already there in some regards, but if you could really have it down to truly 1 pheno, that kind of stability, or even down to 3, where you could get with a reasonable amount of seeds get back and replicate some of these phenos, then I think it'd be worth it. And maybe some of these autoflower, guys out there, are really claiming that, because I would think they're not viable unless you have that kind of that stability. Otherwise, man, I don't want 100 different phenos.
No.
I don't even want 8 different phenos. I want a max of 3 different quality phenos.
Every puppy's the same.
Well, that would be
every puppy to be the same. They all got to look like Lola.
I know.
Get that kind of hybrid vigor kind of thing.
I talked with Night Owl a couple a month or so ago, and he's talking about his most stable line. It took him 4.5 years of working it before he finally got to a generation that was stable enough.
I hate to say it, newsflash, it'd take most of these clowns 4.5 years to get their shit right if they were actually doing it right.
Yeah,
but Fletcher's the first one to point out that most people don't run their own gear, and they definitely don't run their own gear in the amounts that you should, in which if you're releasing 50,000 seeds, you should probably be popping 10,000 on your own.
Yikes.
And no one runs that much of their own gear, because if every seed's worth $1, let's say, it's 10 grand.
Yeah, not happening, right? That's the thing. The value of them has stayed. So, although I will say now, when it came down, remember when there was $30 a pop? I know we're getting a little bit off subject here, but remember Attitude Seed Bank days?
Yeah, that's a commercial number too. I mean, you're still going to go out to shows and spend $100, $200, $300 on a pack of seeds. And by the way, I don't think anybody's wrong charging that. But when you talk about some of these commercial,
not if you've done the work, I don't think there's any problem. I mean,
look, dude, we've been running some of the gear from Phylos, and it's got Terminator gene in it, so you can't clone it or do anything with it, but it actually grows some pretty nice
Terminator gene.
Yeah, they make it so that like you can run it from seed and it runs really well, but you can't ever mom it or do it like it.
Well, but that's even
it's
garbage. Here's the thing.
Garbage.
It's Monsanto shit.
They very well maybe just have I think what they've probably done is it's a true hybrid. So they've taken 2 inbred lines, right? That is basically got to go to like 7th, 8th generation to get an inbred line, which just means you have matching, alleles across the board. So little A, big B, little B, just, watering it down here, right? But you have to have that matching all the way across the board. That becomes an inbred line. You take an inbred line with an inbred line. Now you've got big A, little A, or sorry, big A, little A, big A, big B, little B, all the way across. Boom, 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 boom. So that's true hybrid vigor. But what's going to happen?
You got some deliverance stuff going on there, son.
What's going to happen though after that though is if you were to recross those, you're going to get a big jumbling of the genetics at that point. So you don't have that stability, that uniformity. That's what I was looking for, and the vigor that you get out of true hybrid vigor. Now you're saying you can't even clone them?
Not really. No, they don't have the vigor. They'll like as seeds, they absolutely crush. But you cannot, you get like half the amount of what you would get. I'll be honest with you. I've only been told they don't have the vigor, but I would believe that, you clone them. And
here's the thing. The people that you're, working with, I tend to trust those guys.
I tend to trust them too.
Anyway. All right. So we were kind of, we were noodling around a little sideshow Bob here.
Let's talk about what the research.
Let's talk about data, real data.
What the research actually shows.
So
go.
I actually think I tend to think this is where it gets really interesting because we've got a few actually peer-reviewed studies that we're talking about, and it's directly testing 12-12 against longer photo periods in drug-type cannabis. So, we're going to have some of this.
Bro, go. This is
stuff. Okay. All right.
Science.
So Athrens et al., and we're going to post that here in a second. So this is a 12-hour versus 13-hour study. So 2 THC dominant cultivars. And of course, you'll see why Gabe let me do this one.
I knew you'd like this one because it's
incredible milk and Gorilla Glue. Yeah. Okay. Grown to commercial maturity under 12-12 versus 13-11 at identical PPFD, which is 540 micromoles.
So they didn't run it super hot.
Not super hot, but I also I'm okay with that. That's still a strong light, right? Results, total dry weight of above ground tissue was 32% higher in the incredible milk and 41% higher in Gorilla Glue under 13-11. And if you think about that, getting that extra time, as you said, over the course of the grow, everything else.
Of the grow,
and if you know that it's
par equals weight.
It doesn't need 12 hours of light. It only needs 11 hours of darkness. Well, okay. Both cultivars successfully flowered under 13 hours of light. As mentioned, one cultivar showed slightly delayed flowering onset. The other did not. Quality metrics, cannabinoid, and terpene profiles were not significantly degraded.
I mean, those are big numbers, bro. 32% and 41%. Those are big numbers, dude.
Without significantly degrading terpene profiles.
Nope. That's huge.
That to me, that's massive, because if we start as oil farmers, right? If we start degrading cannabinoid and terpene profiles, now we're back to growing corn, right? And we're not growing for biomass here. We're growing for oil. So I think that, these metrics that we're going to see come up, which why don't you grab the next one? Some of them I think are going to matter more or less, but I really thought this one was quite interesting. The
Peterswald study in 2023. So these are all pretty recent studies.
2024, 2023.
Which is, that's definitely, that speaks volumes to me.
I agree.
But 3 medicinal cannabis cultivars, including Cannatonic, which is a high CBD, Northern NL, and Hindu Kush. Let me tell you, I saw some Hindu Kush lately. Oh, I forgot how good that stuff is. Tested across the line, 9 different flowering photoperiod treatments. The 14-hour photo period produced significantly higher flower biomass than the 12 across all 3 cultivars.
All 3.
So again, you're talking an extra 2 hours a day over the entire cycle. If you're doing a 50-day cycle, 100 extra hours. CBD concentration in the Cannatonic was highest under the treatments that started 14 hours. Shorter photo periods, 10 hours, consistently produced the lowest yields. So we say it all the time. Light equals weight.
And this is one I thought was interesting because most everything is looking at just extra light, longer photo periods. This one did at least because it did 9 different treatments. It went down into the shorter photo periods,
which makes sense.
Duh. Yeah. It's going to produce less. It's
light
less
equals,
micromoles.
Light equals
it was 8 to 12 micromoles of light per CO2 fixed. It's a pretty linear relationship.
And I mean, if you were to talk 100 hours over the cycle divided by 12, you're literally talking an extra 70 days of light time over the life cycle.
And I've talked about this before too. I wouldn't be surprised if you shave a couple actual days off the back end.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Because I'm convinced now, just like chilling units, which we've talked about, which is a totally different thing, but kind of in my mind, a similar mechanism. Different genetics need different hours, but it really, rather than days, I'm convinced it's more of a total hours of highlight
over the life cycle of
the plant.
It's cumulatively, it's however many hours it takes. This many hours of light to flower this plant to maturity over. Are you guys getting this? Are you guys taking fucking notes?
You better be.
Because somebody's going to come back to me in like 5-10 years and be like, you guys were fucking geniuses. Because ultimately it is like your cake takes you, it's either going to cook at 325 or 450 degrees.
Right.
It takes a total amount of degrees.
Is this a 212 hour plant? Is this is this a 372 hour plant?
You guys are taking me into deep water. I'm trying to get graphics to find you, and you know where I ended up? Google Scholar.
Yeah, baby.
And shit that looks like this.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, and that's
this
what
is
we
above
do.
our heads too.
You're not supposed to be learning to play the guitar while we're working.
That is a tablature.
It does look like tablature.
Can we get into the third study? Because I can't even pronounce this dude's name.
Let's go.
Llewellyn or something like that. Again, in 2000, Llewellyn et al. So it's a 2023 study, 10 cultivars across 6 photo periods. So I thought this is quite interesting as well. And it stuck at 12 hours and then went all the way up to 15 hours, which I like because this one hit the threshold.
This one goes to 11.
Right. What's the difference between 10 and 11?
It's one more.
It's one more.
It's 11. Sorry, we're pieces of shit. But we have fun doing this. Okay. Clones of 10 drug type cultivars. And again, I like to shy away from sativa and indica. So I do love that we're talking, I don't care if it's thin leaf or thick leaf. We're talking drug type cultivars. So it's not CBD stuff, right? So tested. So it is our stuff. Tested under 12 hour, 12 and a half, 13 hour, 13 and a half, 14 hour, and 15 hour. All cultivars successfully initiated flowering up to 14 hours. And then what? Well, at 15 hours, some cultivars did not flower. So you can see at that 14-10, that does seem to be, so any people that do want to mess around, don't go far. Don't go past 14. I think that particular study is enough that anybody should know that's your cutoff.
There's some crazy asshole out there who's running some 120-day sativa they're gonna start doing some weird. They're gonna do like 16-hour light.
Well, people are gonna have fun. Shit. Hey, look, girls just want to have fun. Okay. Here is a critical nuance. The lots of weird references today. Here's a critical nuance. The optimal photo period for harvest index, in other words, the ratio of flower weight to total plant weight, was different for every single cultivar.
Surprises there.
No surprises there. We always say every time these discussions end up at strain specificity eventually, right?
Dude, when we go out to eat, you eat half a burger. Maybe I eat the whole thing in the fries.
Yeah, it's always different. GRAMBO, can you move that up just a little bit? So I love, and thanks for bringing that to the conclusions there too. So this really shows you, bam, and that was my favorite part of this one in particular, was just showing, okay, no, let's not get crazy. There is an actual peak, right? And so let's talk about that. So so Blue Gene and Legendary Larry peaked at 11.8
There's
hours.
a point of diminishing returns for anything.
Yes, absolutely. So that was interesting that it peaked at 11.8. Black Triangle peaked at 12.9. OG, Kush, Gorilla Glue, Ghost Train, Haze, and Incredible Milk showed linearly decreasing harvest index as photo period increased. I found that interesting. So it meant that longer light produced more total biomass, but a lower proportion of that was flower. So it actually started putting more into biomass, leaves, stems, the things that we don't want.
Yeah.
We were even talking about, before we got the show started, it's like in reality being oil farmers, and we've even had it before where like a plant didn't even look that healthy. It almost looked kind of unhealthy, but it was so resinous. So, and when it was all done, the flowers were so perfect because all the energy went to the right place.
Yep.
Everything was clicking.
Go back to our bricks. Go back to our bricks episode.
Go check out the bricks episode.
So here's another big one.
What do we got?
I knew would intrigue you, and that's the DLI compound, the elephant.
The elephant in the room.
The elephant in the room, we'll call it. Yeah, but this is the honest scientific caveat that all researchers acknowledge. When you add an extra hour of light in the same PBFT, you're also adding more total photons.
No surprises there, folks.
You know,
right?
A higher daily light integral
is what that ends up meaning,
or DLI. A 13-hour photo period at 540 micromoles gives a DLI of 25 mole versus a 23.8 for 12 hours.
Correct.
So you see what's going on here. You're getting that. So exponential
from
increase.
A scientific standpoint, I know that everybody's going to kind of laugh, right? But it's basically difficult to separate whether this is a product of photo period, in other words, just a longer light period, or more photons. I think all of us can agree pretty quickly that it's about more photons. In my mind, 8 to 12, photons per CO2 fix. It's a pretty linear relationship. Again, from science's standpoint, to isolate it to that single variable point where you can really call it science and have a, hypothesis and prove that hypothesis and blah, blah, blah. It's a little bit difficult. And they would say, and in the literature, it's unresolved in that regard.
Hey guys, today's show is brought to you by JugDealers.shop. You want to grow the best cannabis possible? Head over to JugDealers.shop and get something like our Ruby Fulvic. It's going to give you more efficient uptake on your NPK. You could also try our Winter Frost to increase secondary metabolite uptake and improve your cultivar's flavor and phenotypic expression. Or finally, grab some Cocoa Blocks to save time and money. This is how you can support the show, and it keeps us going. We're never sponsored. We're 100% funded by you taking your garden to the next level. Head over to jugdealers.shop and get something to help your cultivation thrive. Now, back to the show.
And in the literature, it's unresolved in that regard.
You're not wrong there.
But let's talk about the electricity.
I was going to say, let's talk about the math behind the electricity.
Because I like the math take it down.
Hey, not for nothing. Hammers up.
And by the way, shirts have gone down. So if you guys haven't checked out the prices, shirts are discounted. Go check them out.
Shirts are discounted. All shirts on discount.
Here's the reality. An extra hour of light per day is roughly an 8% cost in electrical.
That's major.
As far as your electrical on just that circuit.
Yep.
So if a 1311 schedule produces 30 to 40% more yield from that same footprint, the ROI is extra electricity is significant.
Yes,
they're actually doing pretty well there. Commercial operators, they're paying attention to this for sure.
The home guys, we don't really care. Now,
here's
the thing that I just thought about though, and this does involve also the home guys, but also, I was just in a facility in LA that is flipping rooms, 12 and 12. So that becomes really problematic for anybody and that's from a power aspect.
Look, my building, we have 2,600 flowering lights. We run them 11 to 11.
Right.
So that way because if I have the power in the building that I could run all my rooms,
but now you're like
to 6 PM while people are there. But I think the amount of savings that we generate is in the 6-figure range.
See,
by not running.
Well, and I know a lot of these, if you're running at a certain time of night.
Well, yeah, a certain time of day.
It's more expensive or less expensive.
In Colorado, generally, if you run between like 11 a.m. and 6 p.m., they're going to charge you more for that energy.
Yep.
And they've gotten smart about it on a lot of ends too, where they know that some of us are going to be operating 2 hours.
Right.
In that high peak usage.
Sure.
So they're kind of tagging us. But again, over a year, it adds up.
Better 2 hours than 6 hours, right? So let's look at that final week extension because there's a bit of a strategy to that. So some researchers and growers are exploring increasing the photo period back to 24 hours in the final week of flower. And this is a little bit what we were talking about. This is actually an extension of even what our good friend.
That's some Rasta Jeff stuff.
Right.
Bro science.
And
for the win.
And here's the thing, you know what I mean? He said it exactly like this. After everything's fully set, why not more light? It's too far gone and it's not enough time and it's too far gone to actually re-veg. Anybody that's also re-vegged, they know how long that takes.
Yep.
Shit ain't happening in a week.
It's funny.
Not happening in a week.
I've had some funny discussions with Jeff about it and it's kind of, it goes back to the stresses.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I said to him.
You say a lot is those stresses are really what push it to do weird stuff.
Well, fun stuff. So, I mean, if the stresses are right and it does what we're doing, and for horticultural significance, then maybe it's not so bad. But shout out to Ross and Jeff, and I know he's been getting some heat from the.
Let's talk about the tapering strategy, because most people, again, a lot of us, we're set to a schedule. We don't have that flexibility.
I agree with that.
There's a lot of you guys out there who watch the show who are home growers, and you do have the flexibility.
And I've always really liked this. And this is kind of
that
an
natural taper, bro.
Well, it's also an extension of the sunrise sunset, right?
Yeah.
I always really enjoy that. To be honest with you, later in my growing career, I didn't do it or mess with it as much. But the reality is, I always liked the concept. So. Yeah. Like I was saying, having these triggers naturally over time, right? We know that depending on where you're at latitudinally wise, it's only going to be maybe 30 seconds or up to a minute and a half. Sometimes you're real farther north, it could be like 5-6 minutes a day, that light's changing, but it's very gradual over time. And we just do that like super, super fast, things from overnight, 16 or 18 hours overnight.
Rip that sucker right off.
To 12 hours. It's a Band-Aid, right?
I've said it for 20 years now, but it is by far the most unnatural thing you can do to a plant.
Yeah.
Hey, things are, and the plant, I always say to people, like, the plant wakes up the next morning, it's like, happened? And what'd you guys do, dude? We were just partying, and all of a sudden now it's over.
And I think a lot of people, you could even show, and I mean, if you had the time, you could step down from 18 to 16, and then maybe 16 to 14, and then 14 maybe down to 12. Yep. I mean, you could definitely have some fun with this stuff. And a lot of people are starting with that for what they consider to be a little bit more natural change, instead of going straight to 12-12, going to 11-13. You know what I mean? 13-11 or even 14-11, but then gradually stepping it down the other way. Sorry, I read that the wrong way. It's actually starting, obviously, because you're coming longer days into shorter days. So going like 14-10, 13-11, and then actually going the opposite direction. And I don't know if I prescribe to that.
And beyond that, but maybe we didn't even get into there's some people doing some weird stuff where these light schedules kind of offset.
Well, they're even talking
like 14-12, stuff like that. So all of a sudden you're dealing with
the green lantern, green lamp, like some of those.
So all of a sudden you're dealing with like a 26-hour day.
Yeah, I always say it. I always get that confused.
So again, we've only covered some of it.
Right, and if you do look at the gas lamp technique and you look at the hours and you look at it on this exact same concept and you look at it from phytocred red, phytochrome 5, it does make sense, by the way. It's not crazy. It just looks kind of crazy to begin with.
So let's raise the genetics question, and that's
so Gabe, why
is there a universal?
Why is there
recipe? And I think we covered a bunch of this earlier. I think we 100% have. And again, fortunately, we're able to actually cite some real studies showing that there's genetic specificity, right? And the big deal is genetic or geographic origin or place of origin really ultimately connect. It's going to dictate
the critical night length, right? So, and it's all about critical night length. If you're not understanding what that is or not maximizing that from a strain point of view, you are doing yourself a disservice.
It's funny because I've talked with our buddy Leo and a couple other people about that 35th latitude.
Sure.
And it really does. And for any of you who don't know, Colorado, Jersey, all those places, Maryland, right where Cult is.
Yeah.
That's right in that kind of zone. And that's why you'll see things up in Maine, up in New York. You'll notice things flower. We sell a lot more lights in New York and Maine than we sell in other places. Why? Because they need that supplemental light because...
Well, right. And again, and varieties that come from a northern latitude or more northern latitude are going to be, because you think about like Alaska that gets a super long days. Well, it's not that aggressive, right? But that makes sense why something that would be 14 hours of light, a more, I think, what we're going to say is indica, but really we like to say is thick leaf drug variety. But
Jersey's like 30. I think it's like the 38th parallel. I think May's like the 38th parallel.
Yep, exactly. So, it makes sense why if we dumb it down into indica and sativa, and I don't like to, but if we do, it makes sense. The more sativa ones are going to take a longer night period. They're going to take more like 12 hours, at the very least 11 and a half. And something from a more northern latitude, a Hindu Kush, something like that, is going to be more responsive at that 10 hours of darkness area, because again, that northern latitude above the 38th.
And again, with all the hybridization of things that we've done in the last 10, 15, 20 years of breeding, there's going to be different nuances in there that
this 10 cultivar study, which by the way is the best spread of cultivars I've ever actually seen, the best attempt of it. What does it really show? We see peaks at anywhere from 11.8, 12.2, 12.8. It shows you that, one, there seems to be a diminishing point of returns regardless of what variety you're working with. And then at times you actually, with that longer period, you get more overall growth, but it becomes biomass, more geared towards biomass and less towards flower production. Well, that's not the ROI we're looking for either. So what do you really want to watch for when you're experimenting with this stuff, Gabe?
You want to look at the practical framework of these plants, understanding your genetic lineage of the plants.
Yeah.
Kind of, I always say to people, don't just think of the parents, think of the grandparents and the great grandparents. Think about the stuff that's way back in there, because it all counts the same way it does with us as humans. When is that flowering initiation time? What are you going to see as far as, are you seeing a flip within 10 days, 14 days, a lot of that stuff.
That's what I thought was interesting.
Are you seeing that stretching past 3 weeks with minimal flowering? Because that's going to dictate a lot of how you're going to do things. And sometimes you'll be like, hey, this didn't go into flower hard enough. Maybe it needs this treatment.
Well, and just to kind of simplify it, you might be running two different genetics that in reality you have one that's going to be more sativa dominant that in reality only needs about 11 hours of sunlight, could literally be on that 11, 13 on the opposite side and take those nice long nights. So, and then on the converse end, you're running something that's real northern that really could take all the way up to 14, 10 and you're doing 12, 12 on both of them. So neither of them are you maximizing.
So I'm going to go even further down the rabbit hole.
Let's go.
Say that even if you're running, let's say you're running a pack of seeds.
Okay.
And those seeds actually have different propensities compared to the parents, grandparents. So one would say is expressing more of one parent and one is expressing more of another parent. And so even within that pack of seeds, they may need a different treatment because, again, phenotype times environment, and environment lighting schedule is part of that environment.
100% it is. 100% it is. Now, keep in mind the re-veg risk and what we've seen, at least from the studies, and also what you and I have seen on a practical level, that 15 hours, really, it showed a complete failure to flower in certain cultivars. So we like to say, keep it at least at that. And that's pretty extreme, 15-9. That 14-10 is really pretty extreme as well. Yeah. And I think, I think the future really is these genetics, they're going to come with more sophisticated light recipes. Yep. They're going to come.
Yeah, I've been saying that for long.
Think about on the packet.
It's going to be schedule.
Yeah.
It's going to be spectrum.
Yep.
It's going to be a bunch of different things,
Well, and I think also talking about the lineage more specifically, talking about where it comes from, talking about place of origin, so that people actually can, help dial these things in. So it may not seem like a whole much. We're literally talking about a maximum of 3 to 4 hours in difference. But as we mentioned, just 1 hour is 8%.
And that
8%.
And that in and of itself, not only are we going to be talking timing, not only are we going to be talking light spectrum through the schedule, but it's going to go even deeper as to where we've seen the red at the beginning of the day or the end of the day.
Okay,
we haven't
scratched the surface.
We haven't even scratched the surface.
This is, and the only thing we've really been talking about is just photo timing. Period.
Yeah, just timing.
That's it. We haven't brought in the spectrum piece, which the spectrum piece is a whole other thing. Using a little bit of far red right at the end to help the plants go to sleep and help that conversion of phytochrome red to far red. Using some different spectrums at different times of the year.
We saw the guys. I saw the guys at Curio. This is years ago now. I saw the guys at Curio who were testing using a certain spectrum of UV on clones to manipulate how the plants finished.
Because it initiated these pathways and things and opens things up and hardening.
Wow.
We are
next level.
And again,
hey,
y'all.
What you reap is what you sow, folks.
What you're seeing right now, you're going to see all kinds of people talking about this in later podcasts. Just remember, we were out here first talking about it.
Folks,
so subscribe.
Folks, the future is bright. Thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out.
Quick shout outs.
Yeah. Actually, get your shout out in. I forgot about that. This is definitely
I meant to do it last episode or who knows how far back it is now.
Wow.
But first off, I wanted to shout out Lou for the from Gene Traders, Sour Family Showcase. It was pretty awesome. And shout out to the Sour Family Farms guys. to the New Terp City Smo. He won. I think he won 3. I think he won awards in 3 categories. As always, impressive. you guys have heard me talking about it forever now. But the Elemento Z shined. Just absolutely shined. You don't say. You know, we've only been calling it for a while.
Elemento D, all those good ones. Yeah.
It stood out strong. SI Pete, a bunch of the older heads, they all showed really well at that event, and as they should, because they are the sour guys. So shout out to you guys. Shout out to Lou for a cool event.
Yep.
And
he puts on great events.
Yeah, awesome.
Gabe, always a pleasure having you in the Jug Den. Until next time, everybody.
Peace
out. Big shout out to all of our European listeners. If you're planning at being in Berlin for Mary Jane in June, come by and see us. We're going to do a very exclusive drop on some products you guys have never seen before. It will be sign up only. You'll come and pick up your package there. The way to sign up for this is to go to our website at jugdealers.net and click on the MJ Berlin tab. You can also type it in at jugdealers.net/MJ Berlin, and that will be to sign up for a very exclusive nutrient pack that will be dropping for the very first time. This is available to anybody that's going to be attending Mary Jane Berlin. You must get it in person. Come by and see us. We'll be dropping our booth number here sometime real soon. But if you want to get signed up now, go and click the tab or type in the address and we'll get you signed up. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in Berlin.